Welcome my friends, my name is Levi and welcome to another Alliteration gaming video. Today I have a very fun video. I want to just kind of do a very like open thought discussion video on what I think that we'll see in Vegas this weekend. So yes, Vegas, the first in-person big ol' regional licensing game event is very much upon us. I'm currently recording this on Wednesday, so it is literally in just a few days, and set 2 is still very new and very untested, and I really think it's very up in the air what we might see as a whole across the event. But I think there's gonna be a lot of surprises, but I do think there's a lot of things we can certainly count on and a lot of things we definitely know that we'll be able to see there, and that's just kind of what I want to talk about in this video. By no means is this video like, you know, whatsoever fact in any way. These are obviously just going to be my opinions, and they're not even very you know, they're not set in stone opinions by any means whatsoever. This is just kind of based on my experience playing in the set 2 environment so far in such a short time, and what I can kind of surmise that we might see. And so I have like a few columns here that I want to talk about. The first column is kind of the thing on everyone's mind probably when they see a video like this, or when they just think about playing competitively right now in general, is the throw meta. Now I've seen that term thrown right around so much lately, and it's kind of just centered around the fact that they printed a lot of throws in set 2. The good symbol now has 4 throws, the life symbol has 4 throws, the water symbol has 3 throws if you count tape swing as 1, 4 if you're Moneta with the grape rush. It's a little obnoxious, and even other symbols have access to quite a few and some really insane interactions with them. And I've seen a large amount of deck pitches since I started playing in the set 2 environment start with, okay, so since you can play 16 throws now, and then proceed, right? So I think that is a very big thing on everyone's mind. Now, what do I think about the throw meta? Well, I think that the throw meta is maybe a bit of a misleading term, if anything, because I don't think these are the best decks by any means, but they're definitely like, they are guaranteed value decks, right? They're very safe decks. You don't have to like sculpt properly necessarily, or think about, you know, as many things, because you're like, well, if I throw this attack down, it'll deal them some amount of damage and it'll give me momentum and it'll progress my game state, right? Like, so they're much safer picks, because you don't have to worry about what your opponent is doing as much. There's a bit less interaction, and depending on how hard you go in the throw department, they can be much more like solitaire style decks. That being said, Universus is a a game of really intense interaction, so those don't prevail effortlessly, but there's still things we have to take into account. So because people are playing these decks so much, it's very important to be mindful of that in your deck choice, and if you're able to combat them, and if you are, making sure you're combating them in your deck. So the throw meta, see, I kind of have represented by a bunch of, you know, a bunch of different throws. Here's some of the more powerful ones in the meta right now. But then on this, at the same time, we have steps like Face Shield that'll nullify the throw. We have Confuse to remove throw from it. We have Wall Cling to stop the damage. We have Gunhead to reset the damage to 2, and then, you know, put some form of damage reduction on it, make it really easy. We have Spooky, which most of the time your throws are like they're usually 2 speed most of the time with a big damage, so you can swap them, make them 2 damage, and then use some form of minimal damage reduction. Very less threatening now. And then of course we have stuff like Excited for Blood and Super Regen and healing in general, and being able to infinitely reuse your healing through unflips and stuff like that is also a natural counter to throws, because if they're trying to clock you in a very slow chip damage type of strategy, those types of strategies are going to be very effective against them, because you're just going to be able to out heal their max damage output until they start attacking you in more honest manners, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what I have to say about the throw meta, and we will talk about the throw meta more as we go through these characters, because there's definitely like a lot of the deck choices center around this, and whether they can play it, combat it, or do both. That's kind of one of the most intense things, that as you can see, a lot of the counters of the throws are under water and life, which are also some of the symbols with the most throws. So it really just makes those symbols like the strongest and safest picks, because they can play throw decks and counter them effortlessly with stuff like Faith Shield and Wall Cling and, you know, yada. But it's not that plain and dry. I digress though. So next column I want to kind of talk about is the top dogs. By this I just mean anything that was very strong in the set 1 format, and I think is still going to be strong. I think Sue is still insanely strong, still potentially the best deck in the format. Very, very, very powerful character still. I think there are things that slow her down a little bit now and can trick her up, but I think the raw power of the character is still very, very unmatched. And you can play her on things like the life symbol now that got so much support and so much power in set 2. Like, I think Sue on life and water is really, 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 really strong still. Maybe not the best deck anymore. I still think she's very up there, but she's certainly still one that you need to look out for and is going to be around like we saw at the 1K. And I'm going to reference the 1K a lot because that's the biggest, you know, aside from like the webcam weeklies, that's like the real competitive event that we've had since set 2 started. Next it's All Might 3. This character is like still kind of really underrepresented. He kind of started showing up a bit more as he should in the set 1 format near the end there. And then the character is still really, really powerful. The good symbol got a lot of good things this set, and I think he's still the best, just like straight up raw stats, good stuff value deck. You know, just an 8-hander with 30 health on the good symbol, like that's just nice with it, man. Jiro, I think Jiro's still really, really, really strong. Air Jiro, I think, can still just like one turn kill you out of nowhere. Still an absolute menace to the meta, and you definitely need to be ready for her. There are things that can slow her down a little bit now. We have a lot more onboard answers, if you will, in the set 2 environment. So I think that does make it a little bit harder for her to get there in certain scenarios. But I think the raw output of the character is crazy, and she's got stuff like double jab pummel and things to make her her really, really long strings just even more ridiculous now. And then, of course, the queen who came in at the end here, Ochako 1. I think Ochako 1 is still very, very strong. I feel like life is her best symbol now. Life's just so strong, but air also got really, 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 really good tools this set. You can't sleep on either build, and I could very, very much see either of them. I could see all of these topping and or potentially winning the event. Everyone in the top dogs, both sections, are characters that if they won the event, I would not be terribly surprised, and I absolutely expect to see them in the top slots. So those are the set 1 characters that I think are still really strong. Now to move on to the new top dog. So I do start this off with 2 set 1 characters. I think it's because it's really set 2 that has kind of brought them really into the top dog spotlight now, if they kind of weren't already there before, really. So the first one I want to talk about is All Might 2. I think All Might 2 has historically been a very, very powerful character. He's been showing some results here and there, especially at the end. He just takes a lot of, I think, work and dedication to get there. But now in set 2, I think all 3 of his builds are extremely competitively viable. I think the all build is probably the least of them, but it is, I think, still quite strong, and I think it's very, very, very fun to play. The fire build got so many new tools this set. Whether you're playing for ranged or fury, both builds are really good. They got access to better block zones and some onboard foundation answers, and then of course just really good attacks that synergize with All Might, like confident counter strike and stuff like that. And then his good build is the one that I really want to talk about here, because the good build with the 16 throws is really, really, really putrid. It's a very, very unique throw deck because you have to respect the aggro of it, because every throw is like 8, 10, 12 damage. You still have to full block everything, and then you're taking the half, which is like taking normal attacks in other decks. It's really, really scary. He gets to draw so many cards and then survival for the good symbol's powerful defensive foundation base. I think it's a really, really, really solid deck. I think of the throw decks, it's the one being talked about the least, but I think it's at least as strong, if not better, than Moneta, just because of how much more threatening it is. You don't get a lot of turns to try and deal with this guy. Like, he can be outputting, you know, full block everything, take 10 early on his turn 1 over and over again. And then he draws so many cards from that point on, it's hard for him not to snowball into seeing whatever else he needs to close the game. So I think All Might 2 on the good symbol is a huge proprietor of the throw meta. Again, throw things do shut him down, but at the end of the day, like, he does have 16 in his deck. He draws so many cards between his character and passing the torch and reverse throw. And he just has so many ways to find them, and he's got Taiyaki Fanatics to cancel things like Wall Cling, and his Invincible Clasp also cancels things on its own. I think it's a very, very, very good deck. Next, I want to talk about Eraserhead. I've always been a huge believer in Eraserhead in the meta. He's been at the top of my tier list since the beginning of time. I have made videos on why I think he's so good, but also not really showing up in the meta. But I think we are kind of circulating into a meta that he's really, really good in, as we kind of circulate out of the spam of like the air characters that sealing their character doesn't do much against, and we rotate more into a lot of these not only very, very character reliant decks, but very, very throw meta type decks. So the reason I have Eraserhead pictured with a smaller Ida and a smaller Kurogiri is I think these three kind of make up a trio of characters that represent the power of the Void symbol right now. So if you notice, we do have Spooky, Training with Gunhead, and Confused all in the Void symbol right now, and the Void symbol's also packing things, like I don't have them here, but they have things like Villains Defeated, combining into a lot of throw hate on these symbols. Furthermore, I think right now it's very dangerous to play a 7-hander not on Water, Life, or Void, because you won't be packing enough throw hate to survive against those decks and your little 20 health pool, right? Or your 19 in some of these characters' instances. But as far as Eraser goes, I think Eraser, Kurogiri, and Ida make it, like, if I was going to make a really good Void deck, I would be starting as one of those and siding the other two, and then just playing the best, like, good stuff Void, probably Void Kicks deck I can play. You have so many good tricks in that deck. Confused will take care of your throws, Gunhead will take care of your throws, Spooky combined with Eraser, or Spooky combined with the Rebound Sidekick. You have so many ways to just like straight up nullify attacks. Kurogiri straight up nullifies attacks, and then Eraser is going to be nullifying their character. Like, depending on what you think you're going to see, you can start out as one of these characters, and then when it comes to something you just want to be a generically good character against, you can go into Ida 3, who is just like the best generic Void character. If their deck is very character reliant, like, you know, like Todoroki or Mineta or Toga, or, you know, any of those really, like, there's a lot of strong characters out there. Ochako 2, right? There's so many strong characters out there. You go into Eraserhead, and if they're one of those kind of spammy air decks that's really reliant on certain attacks and combos and stuff like that, you can go into Kurogiri and just kind of stall them out that way. Like, there's like the deck as a whole is so flexible between these three characters and just the Void card pool. They have so many good defensive tools, so many good attack lineups. You don't even have to play the kicks necessarily. There's other ways you can go with the attacks. You have stuff like Airstream Driver. I think Void is a really powerful symbol right now, and for me, these three characters kind of represent that, and how you could easily see any of them and or all of them together in a really, really strong Void deck. Next, we finally have to talk about the Menace himself, Mineta 2. This character was probably the first character people were really starting to talk about once they started playtesting set 2, as far as like, hey, this is problematic, this is toxic, this is gonna get banned, this is way too good, etc, etc, etc. I'll say this about Mineta. Mineta is gonna be one of the most, whether you're winning or losing, have a good or bad matchup, Mineta is one of the most unfun game experiences you can have. This guy is really, really, really hard to deal with. He's got so much card pool stuffing, resetting all your stuff to 0, never really being a true 5-hander because his throws are all gonna guarantee momentum to guarantee him card draw, a lot like All Might 2 does. This guy is really hard to deal with. You have to be packing a lot of the suitable throw hate are stuff that clears your card pool, such as Fruits of Our Labors. If you do not have answers to this guy, he will walk all over you. If you do not have answers to this very prominent meta character, he will walk all over you. I don't think he's too oppressive. I think he has holes that you can exploit, and you can definitely work around him and input your player's skill to come out on top of that matchup. But if you're not ready for it, none of that will matter. If you're not preparing the right answers, the right sideboard cards, the right main deck cards, he will walk all over you, and it is a matchup you really need to know how to navigate if you want to survive in this meta. I think despite all of that, because he dictates all of that so hard, the character is still really, really strong and deserves to be up here, absolutely. Next one is about Todoroki 2. Todoroki 2, I kind of been referring to him as the All Might 3 of this set. He doesn't do anything super unique or fancy or different, and he'll kind of always do what you expect him to do, but he does it really, really well in the form of just being a basically being a 727 with the most rawest of raw stats all over his face. So much free stun, so much free +2/+2. The stats pumps is insane. The loops he enables between stuff like Half Out Ignition and his throws and anything that you let hit him. His 2-check ultra rare, the Searing Glacial Storm, forcing you to play in the game state he wants you to play in. Everything about this character is really, really, really powerful. On any of his symbols, honestly, Fire, Water, and Order, I think all of those builds are really strong. There's not a lot more to say about him. He's just a very, very powerful character, and if he just catches you with your pants down, he's just gonna beat the life out of you with the biggest attacks you've ever seen. So many raw stats, your whole board's gonna be committed out, and you're not gonna be able to do a thing about it. Stun 6 is a hell of a drug. And then lastly, in the new top dog slot, I want to talk about Himiko Toga. This was kind of when Toga got revealed, and then like the rest of the life throws got revealed, we kind of were like, yo, Throga, right? That was a like the hotness, right? So, you play Toga with just nothing but throws, and then you just deal all this free burn damage, you heal all this free health, you get all this free card cycle, and it's really, really, really hard to kill. She's not impossible to kill. Toga does struggle at dealing with really, really longer strings, so generally you want to build out against her for a while and then kind of send more strings based at her. The only issue is you do have to just, you know, start fighting through the wall clings and the Exciter for Bloods and stuff like that, but she's going to be looping those if you just keep poking at her anyway. She's just going to be using them very incrementally and unflipping them and stuff like that. I think that the best Toga builds are the ones who kind of meet more in the middle, not necessarily Throga, but much more just, you know, taking advantage of the full value of the character, you know, playing your throws to guarantee your game state progression and advantage, but also playing, you know, really big bombs that can hit them, you know, hard when you need them to. Either way, I think the character is really, really powerful, and you're going to see a ton of her at the top tables. And like I said, I would not be surprised if any of these characters won the event. I think any of them could totally win the event. I think the only one who I would say probably definitely won't win is Moneta, because I think people are going to be so ready for him. I think people will be a little less ready for a lot of the other characters, at least comparatively, right? Because everyone's talking about Moneta. But I digress. Those are kind of all of the top dogs in my eyes. I expect to see all of these guys in the top 16. I'd be surprised if one of them didn't make it there, unless we're just really overloaded on one or two certain characters. But I should say I wouldn't be surprised if any of them made top 16, and I wouldn't be surprised if any of them won. And then last but not least, the last thing I want to talk about is the sleepers. So really all this means is that despite everything I just said, Universus is the game it is, where like if you put in the work and dedication with almost any character and then, you know, play them perfectly, you know, version 17 played perfectly all day, can easily top and win any event. We've seen a lot of really crazy stuff from a lot of really, really crazy players. You know, we've seen Marcus on Tokoyami, we've seen the infamous Nathan on his Momo, we've seen, you know, Redman on Denki, you know, we've seen really, really good Sero and Ochako 2 players. We've got a lot of good newcomers too. I think a good Endeavor could get there. I didn't put him up here, but I think a good Stain could get there. Bakugo 2, Midoriya 2, Cementos. I think all these characters are really, really powerful. All of them could definitely get there in the hands of the right player and with the right build played perfectly. I think all of them could get there. So, you know, if top 16 is actually none of these characters and it's nothing but all these super characters, I'll certainly be surprised, but, you know, it's not completely out of the question, I should say. Anyway, guys, those are my overall thoughts on what we can expect to see in Vegas so far. It could be very, very, very close to this. It could be a little bit in the middle. It could be very, very far away from this. As I said, this is just kind of based on my limited play experience in Set 2, what I've been observing from watching games, from playing decks myself. I think these are kind of the things to look out for right now and what you should expect when you are flying in to Las Vegas this weekend and sleeving up your deck and getting ready to play in this sick tournament. I'm very excited to see all of you guys play. I am going to be casting the event, so I can't wait to commentate your games. I hope you guys give me some, I know you guys are going to give me some amazing ones to talk about with my boy Aspera, and I will see you guys there this weekend. Thanks for watching this video so much. Take it easy, guys. Levi's out.